Protection of whistleblowers has been brought into sharp focus as Athol Williams flees the country fearing for his safety. Meanwhile, Defend Our Democracy has launched Anti-Corruption Week to highlight the lack of safeguards for whistleblowers. Williams, who testified at the Zondo Commission, says leaving South Africa was his last resort because government wouldn't protect him. We will speak to Williams a little later on the show. Govan Whittles is following the story for us. He joins us now live in studio. So, Govan, there's clearly not enough support for whistleblowers in the country. We've heard that time and time again from several organizations, including the president at the Zondo Commission. So what is Outa saying on Athol Williams having to flee the country because of his concerns?
Well, firstly, they're disappointed that it's come to this. And secondly, they believe that he shouldn't be allowed to just remain in a sort of exile. And that South Africa's civil society, and particularly the government, should step in and offer him protection, try and get him back into South Africa. So this was all said at the launch of the Anti-Corruption Week, which is a week that's 3 weeks that's meant to culminate on the 9th of December, on International Anti-Corruption Day, and between then and now they'll host a series of events that's meant to not only highlight the state of corruption in South Africa, but what they believe the government should be doing and how legislation should be tightened to not only offer whistleblowers protection, but prosecute those who have suspicions of corruption or have been convicted of corruption. A few interesting points raised by the different signatories of the Defend Our Democracy campaign, among them that none of the companies which have been implicated in PPE corruption have yet been blacklisted by the National Treasury. And they say this is a huge problem which points towards a lack of political will to follow through and have serious consequences for those caught in corruption. Outa is saying that they want the president to send a signal to Athol Williams and to extend his hand, offer an olive branch of sorts. And this is what Wayne Duvenage of Outa had to say about it.
We need to see government step up to the plate with regards to Athol Williams. We need them to do something about this. We need them to make an offer to Athol to come back. And we're not talking just government here, we're talking business. This country has lost an extremely important, knowledgeable individual who has so much to offer. And we cannot just sit back and allow him to leave without the efforts to try and bring him back. Now, maybe that ship has already sailed, but the effort needs to be made, a meaningful effort to ensure that at least some options are put on the table for him. Because if we continue to lose people like Athol Williams, less and less whistleblowers are going to speak up. And we can't afford that in this country. But what we are not seeing is government doing what they should be doing in that regard. He has left because there is no meaningful support for whistleblowers. There's no protection. There's no laws that really substantively help whistleblowers to stand up and do what they have to do. We rely on whistleblowers to fight corruption, and yet the state sits back and just watches the annihilation, the loneliness of whistleblowers, the murder of whistleblowers. We've heard enough.
So what's Defend Our Democracy saying South Africans actually need to do in order to win the fight against corruption?
Well, it's all about consolidating that coalition of people who are fighting corruption, also campaigning for better laws to protect people who want to expose corruption, but also strengthening the current legislation so that people who are accused of corruption are more easily investigated and that there are real-time consequences for those who are found to be benefiting off the spoils of corruption. And an interesting comment from Frank Chikane, the Reverend, he's the convener of the Defend Our Democracy campaign, saying that now that coalition negotiations are underway in this week, it presents a time to highlight the need to consolidate coalitions around transparency and not necessarily around trade-offs which could lead to further corruption as people horse trade for positions or certain projects in municipalities. They've raised concern about the level of corruption at local municipalities, but Reverend Frank Chikane believes there is something we could do as South Africans to get the country out of the current state.
Need to create a situation where every South African is going to take on corruption. So I would like today to call on the people of South Africa that we can't be overwhelmed by corrupt people. We're going to make sure that we overwhelm them. And every corner where we find them, we're going to expose them. And we need to call on all South Africans to make it their project. And once we do that, will defeat corruption. And I am convinced that that's what we need to do as people of South Africa.